I'm Bart Graves, I'm spokesman for the Arizona Department of Public Safety. This is a program that we've been heavily involved with going back to last summer and even actually back to 2013 to combat the incredibly grim problem right now of people smuggling and exploiting children across the state. DPS is a proud partner in this effort to combat this horrific crime and to explain our role and the fact that we are involved in this training of law enforcement around the state, along with our own officers, is the director of the Arizona Department of Public Safety, Colonel Frank Milstead.
Thanks, Bart. Good afternoon, and thank you all for coming. For the record, I'm Colonel Frank Milstead, M-I-L-S-T-E-A-D, newly appointed director of the Arizona Department of Public Safety. I wanted to talk about something that happened in March, but I want to lead you into the story for just a little bit. Back in 2013, the governor signed an executive order basically trying to put together training and education for law enforcement by bringing together community partners to help combat sex trafficking and human trafficking. We've read about it. It was very prevalent. We saw things come out during Super Bowl time about the increase that might happen during those times. But I will tell you, with the training that we've been providing law enforcement around the state, particularly 450 Arizona Department of Public Safety Highway Patrol officers and criminal investigators. The program is called Interdiction for the Protection of Children program. We have modified this program to fit the needs of the state of Arizona. We've trained our officers, we train other local law enforcement, and we will continue to do that throughout the year. We found immediate results. So far, since the training had started, we have rescued 11 juveniles who are either missing, runaway, or being exploited. The most recent event happened on March 13th in Tempe. A Department of Public Safety Arizona Highway Patrol officer stopped a vehicle in Tempe for a traffic violation. During the investigation of the stop, it was determined that the driver was on supervised probation for human smuggling. The officer was astute, spent a lot of time figuring out exactly what he had before him. He discovered that there was a 14-year-old in the car who was listed as missing. There was a 17-year-old female in the car that was listed as a runaway. We were able to recover both of them safely. This particular story ends up with a positive ending because of that interdiction by the Arizona Highway Patrol officer. That is not always what happens, and we all read about the grim results when we aren't there in time. We don't save somebody from these type of predators. That is why we're here today, and that is the extension of law enforcement is the public. You're the eyes and ears of this agency and every other agency. What I'm asking is, when you see something unusual, don't rationalize it away. Be a good witness. Write down a license plate number, get a vehicle description, an identification point that you can use, and contact your local law enforcement. We have opportunities because we patrol the 7,000 miles of Arizona highways as the Arizona Highway Patrol to have these stops and have interdiction opportunities. We contact the public all the time on traffic matters, but without the eyes and ears of the public, we are not nearly as effective. We hope to have a number of teams deployed throughout the state in the next several months. There'll be 3-person teams that will go out and provide training in the rural areas of the state in this particular program, trying to train all law enforcement on the particular interdiction and to try to curtail those possible moments when we can interdict and solve a crime involving exploited missing children or the runaways. I can tell you that the efforts that we've provided so far, of those 11 that we've recovered, 4 of them were runaways, 5 of them were missing, and the remainder were actually exploited children that we were able to recover, again, with a positive ending. These are just a small amount of the number of people that move through the state. As you can imagine, state highways are probably the most common way that people get moved throughout the country because you can't fly without ID, without the right things with you, but you can drive across this country without those type of checks and balances being in place. So if you have any questions, I'll answer them, and I also have a couple of the other staff here to help you if you have specifics.
So you say you've trained some law enforcement, but you're going to be dispatching these teams to do more?
Correct. I think on your sheet, your press release, I think the number is right around 368 that we've trained outside of DPS and 450 within DPS, but those numbers are precise on your press release.
Anybody else?
Were these children from this country?
Tim?
Yes, they were all from the
Come on
United
up to
States.
Yeah.
For the record, my name is Lieutenant Colonel Tim Chung. I'm the Assistant Director of Criminal Investigations here at DPS. And yes, all the juveniles, the 11 juveniles were U.S. citizens throughout the United States.
Any other questions, Colonel?
Are there any particular areas of the state that are more problems than others?
You know, the entire state is in jeopardy. That's why we have trained Highway Patrol officers stationed throughout Arizona in the interdiction for the protection of children. In addition, we have at least one criminal investigation detective for every squad throughout the state that's trained in this course. So the plan is that when an officer stops a vehicle and suspects a human or child sex trafficking victim, they can call anybody from the Criminal Investigations Division. The response time is very short because we're in the local area, and the criminal investigation detective can follow up and further that investigation.
Director Milstead said if you see something suspicious while you're driving around, get a license plate number, whatever, what kinds of things should people be looking for?
There's a lot of things. If for the basic public, if you just have the feeling that something is wrong, typically that should cause you to call 911. Take notes on the vehicle, descriptions of the people, the drivers, the adults, the children. That's important. This training provides law enforcement officers with many different indicators when taken in totality of the circumstances will cause them to further their investigation. To the average person, if it looks out of the ordinary, if it does not look right, see something, say something, call 911, and report whatever observations that you have.
The incident on March 13th, did the detention there lead you to any home, any other place?
In that particular investigation, it was fairly rapidly resolved by the investigation of the Highway Patrol officer in conjunction with reporting that information to our Arizona Counterterrorism Information Center. So that in that case, it was resolved rather quickly. And the person that they were with was known to the two juveniles.
Have any of the cases that you cited here today, have they come as a result of people calling in because they saw something weird?
Most of, or all of the investigations were actually on-view investigations. They were initiated by the officer making a traffic stop in the course of his daily activities, and then furthering that based upon indicators that the officer has found.
You mentioned traffic stop, but for civilians, I guess I mean, these are people who don't want to be on the open, so rest stops, motels, places like that are kind of where you would see this type of activity, is that correct?
Yes, anywhere in the open. Like you said, rest areas, restaurants, motels, hotels, bus stops, parks, anywhere where you see children, they could be potential victims.
Anybody else?
How did DPS handle situations like this before this program?
Well, based upon the 2013, the executive order to create the task force, really, to be quite honest, law enforcement was really not aware of the extent of human trafficking, child sex trafficking, at least in Arizona, and I can tell you throughout the United States. As the awareness, education became more predominant by each state, that has what has led us to where we're at today.
Is there also an online element to this, like a Craigslist, or is that a different investigation?
That is totally different. It's still human sex trafficking, but that is an entirely different arena where we have local and county jurisdictions and federal jurisdictions investigating those types of incidences.
I noticed in your press release, this was developed by the Texas Department of Public Safety. How did it come to your attention? Did it work so well there in Texas that
Yeah,
it
Texas.
caught your eye, or?
Yes, Texas had were quite successful with the training and training their troopers. We saw the success there, so we brought it here to Arizona. And as you can see, from the very last day of our first class in July 2014, we started making rescues as people were leaving that first class.
Anyone else?
How many officers are on the streets now? Is it 217?
We have, the Highway Patrol Division has about 850 officers throughout the state.
But I mean, that are involved in this program?
Right now, we have, I believe it's close to 250 to 300 patrol officers. And that's only for the Department of Public Safety. This course that we have offered 3 times in the past year has been offered to both city, county, other state, federal, and tribal agencies. So we have a large component that have received this training.
Before this training started, did officers simply not know what to look for?
You're exactly right. We did not know what we were looking for at the time. We knew things were suspicious. We would search cars, but we couldn't put our finger on it, but now we can.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you all for coming.
You